Good morning, Queen's Voice. Peter Koufalis here today. At one of our favorite haunts, as you all know, the Jax Inn Diner here in Jackson Heights on Northern Boulevard. Anyway, today we have a special guest with us, Yiatin Chu, who is running in Queens on the GOP ticket for the New York State Assembly, New York State Senate, New York State Senate, District 11. And the district encompasses a lot of different parts of Queens and sections of certain parts only due to redistricting. So I'll let Yiatin introduce herself and the areas that she's going to be covering. So Yiatin, thanks for joining us. Please tell the audience, so I don't screw it up, what exactly District 11 will cover.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Peter. It's wonderful to be here. I love this diner, and it has parking, which is great,
Yes.
especially in Jackson Heights, where
Yes,
parking
an
is
amenity.
very difficult to find. My district is newly drawn 2 years ago as part of the every 10-year redistricting process we have in New York and everywhere in the United States. So the Senate district was drawn to really it's shaped very differently than it was 2 years ago. I have the northern piece of Astoria connecting through Rikers and LaGuardia Airport, and the more continuous section of the district winds from College Point, then Whitestone, includes a bit of North Flushing, Bay Terrace, Douglaston, Little Neck, Oakland Gardens, swings down to basically the Queens areas of Floral Park, Queens Village, Hollis Hills, where am I missing? Belrose.
Belrose too?
Yes, Belrose, Jamaica Estates.
Okay.
So there are sections in those neighborhoods that obviously people call home.
Sure.
I want to say Glen Oaks. Glen Oaks is a very big community
So,
as well. It's all in my district.
Diverse on the map, definitely, and
Yes.
definitely diverse in terms of the communities that encompasses it.
Oh yeah. Ethnically speaking, in terms of population, it is a 36% Asian plurality district, 30% white, 18% Hispanic, 8% black, and the rest is multiracial. And while people say, oh wow, you've got a pretty big chunk of Asians in your district, 36% is on the high side, although a lot of the adjacent Senate districts as well as assembly districts that I overlap with have much higher numbers of Asians. My district really breaks into, I want to say, the northern part as well as, and then the southern part.
Okay.
So the northern part, which encompasses College Point, Whitestone, Bay Terrace, Douglaston, Little Neck, the Asians categorized in there are predominantly East Asians, so more Chinese and Koreans. And as you go to the southern part of my district, which includes Belrose, a lot more South Asians. So I would say predominantly Bangladeshi, Sikh, and other South Asians that make up the southern part of my district. Okay. So very different communities, very different cultural values and political leanings. So it's not a monolith, as they say, as it relates to the politics of the district.
Sure. And with such a diverse district in terms of the ethnicity as well as the mapping, are you finding the same issues your constituents are complaining about or asking for change? Is it different? Does it vary from area to area? What's your take on that?
It definitely varies a bit area to area. I've spent the last 2-3 months since announcing that I'm running for office petitioning. It's part of our democratic system in which we have to petition to get on the ballot.
Knocking on doors?
Knocking on doors. It started in late February, so when it was still quite cold, to more recently for the independent line. So I've spoken to, I want to say thousands of constituents in my district. So I have a good sense of what's important to them, and I think from that standpoint, it is an important process to have gone through. It does vary a little bit. I would say in terms of voters, in the northern part where I did a lot of the petitioning for my Republican line, the majority of people most engaged are white voters, most Republican voters.
Sure.
And I would say that crime or the bail reform that they passed in 2019 is top of mind.
Sure.
For some of them, the the migrant crisis, which is more recent, comes
Yeah.
up a lot. And I would say overall, for younger families, the issue I hear most is cost of living and quality of life. Uh, as I said before, a lot of working parents that I think are the busiest demographic,
Oh yeah.
they don't get too caught up with a lot of the ins and outs of the politics, but they have to, live their life, and the things that impact them are how much they pay every month, mortgage rates as they look to maybe move, and quality of life as they're driving around Queens, what the roads are like and how it's changed.
Terrible.
The looming congestion pricing was something that came up quite often, and we can certainly talk about how that's changed a bit, since
Definitely.
Hochul's announcement
Well,
2
she
weeks
didn't
ago.
stop it.
She paused
suspended it.
Yeah, she paused
So
it.
after the election,
That's what people are guessing
Yes.
is whenever it's politically expedient for her to reintroduce it, bring it back, unpause the pause.
Not
is,
very
is when
popular.
We're gonna. It's certainly not popular. I have to say, speaking to the thousands of people, maybe 2 people have said that they're in support of this.
Wow.
We're
2,
talking
that's
about
a lot. That's-
Eastern
yes.
Queens. Eastern Queens. Most people own cars.
we're
at
already
least
being
one car.
taxed on these roads. We're already being taxed on this infrastructure, and yet it's just another money grab. It's crazy.
Yes, we are. People complain about the red light, the speeding cameras that
Everywhere.
have expanded.
Yes, please get rid of them.
Oh gosh,
They're everywhere.
They are everywhere.
Another 600, I think I heard on the radio, are coming.
And look, everyone cares about safety. Where it started was around schools,
Yes.
around school zones,
During
right?
school hours.
during school hours, and then I guess it was lucrative. They found a way to use that to expand it everywhere. And I want to say the most egregious one that I've seen is on the service road off the Cross Island Expressway. There are no kids crossing a service road. It is where people are either speeding up or slowing down from coming off of highways. It is definitely, that is a blatant money grab. And people notice that.
Yeah.
People are very, very unhappy about that.
Yeah. And more unhappy probably what they're doing with all that extra money, where it's going.
Well, that the accountability for where our tax dollars are going is always been a big issue for me. So yeah, that's the district. I want to get back to answering your question,
Sure.
but I've spoken to a lot, and I want to say, in the South, because of Creedmoor being situated in my district.
Oh yeah.
So Creedmoor is in Belrose
Big
on
hot
Hillside.
topic.
Very hot topic. We have over 1,000 single migrant men that are being sheltered there.
That's just crazy.
It is across the street from an elementary school that I visited while I was petitioning. And I spoke to neighbors and parents of the school and asked them how it's impacted their lives. Some of them were very measured in what they want to say.
Sure.
I spoke to a grandmother who lived across the street from the school. And it's a pretty neighborhood where you can see people care about their community, their lawns, now we're in the spring, summer, you can tell by the way they've landscaped it. This is a neighborhood that cares about, what things look like and how secure and protected they are. So when I spoke to the grandmother, I said, well, how have you seen things? She said, look, I live across the street from the school. I look out my window many times during the day because I'm afraid there are young kids that are being dropped off and dismissed. And she said, the migrant men are going into her garbage cans and they're probably looking for bottles and trying to make recycling and so forth. But it's a very insecure feeling of people trespassing your property.
It's very third world.
Yeah, rumbling through your garbage. And as she walks half a block onto Hillside, you have people sitting around on the park benches.
Oh, we've seen it. Yeah. Loitering.
Loitering.
With no jobs.
With no jobs, on their phones, congregating.
Sleeping, laying down.
Walking on Hillside. They're not doing anything illegal. They're not necessarily doing anything menacing at the times that we've seen, but these are thousands of new people that have descended into your neighborhood. Unvetted. And it's just, it feels like a very different neighborhood right now.
Yeah, and we hear that most of the top issues you brought up, we hear that from people running throughout Queens, throughout the area, even, folks in the Bronx we've been talking to, that the illegal aliens coming here is a huge problem. Even if they're not doing anything technically criminal activity, just going to people's garbage, making them feel uncomfortable.
Going to people's garbage, and I want to say
it's an eyesore.
parents, families that I'm connected to around the city said, even going to Home Depot.
Every Home Depot is a bastion for harassment of I need money, I need food, or give me a job. It's crazy.
They're trying to find ways to make some money, right?
Sure.
So whether it's approaching someone buying a cart full of, annuals to plant, they want to help and hoping to get $5. But the truth is, as a woman who go to Home Depot to do exactly that, I just don't feel I just don't feel comfortable being confronted by a stranger close to my car. There is a circle of where
if you want help, you'll call them.
Yeah, kind of. So I think it's a bit unnerving for most people.
And I'll be very honest with you. The Home Depot where I live in Queens, I've complained a few times. The workers have told me that off the record they don't feel comfortable. And I've called and complained a few times. I don't bring my wife, my mom, and my daughter there because it's just not. I don't feel safe personally. And I'm a big guy who can take care of himself. I just feel, wow, there's a lot of characters out here who, maybe up to nefarious things, maybe not, but I don't feel comfortable with them. So the Home Depot's, unfortunately, not to pick on them, but they have become a magnet for a lot of the illegals looking for work. And we did a few stories on those. One we're doing more recently, so it's
okay. So it is something I'm hearing. It's commonplace. More recently, I spoke to a dad who had a son in the third grade at the school across from Creedmoor, and he said, "I've been a lifelong Democrat. I vote Democrat every single election," and he said, "This year I'm not voting." I said, "Well, instead of not voting, can you do a protest vote?" And I said, "So what's the issue?" He said, I've been, I didn't ask him, but he looked of South Asian descent.
Okay.
And I said, well, what's your issue? He said, we've been trying to get my family over for decades. And after 18 years, his relative is finally coming. He said, there is a way to do it the right way. And we've waited and gone through the process, and it really bothers me that people are just walking across. And in addition to that, getting a lot of help that most of us who are immigrants who've come to this country never got. And I don't know if that was part of Biden's administration's, thinking about bringing across or leaving the door open.
Well, they're buying loyalty.
But I want to say, if you think you're getting sympathy from immigrants here, Hispanic immigrants, Asian immigrants about this policy, I want to say that from what I've heard, we're the ones that are the harshest about the policy, knowing how hard it has been for families to
do the right way.
To do it the right way. The time it takes.
The money
and just the struggles, of going through an immigrant life and pursuing the American dream.
And I've spoken about this a few times. My wife comes from South America. She didn't crawl under a fence. She didn't jump over a fence. And she didn't get anything. And it was a long process, expensive, arduous, and not dealing with the immigration naturalization bureaucrats. It's not pleasant.
I mean, look, we are in the greatest country in the world.
Amen.
And people know it.
Yeah.
Do I blame people for wanting to come here, whether it's for asylum, family relations, economic opportunity? No. But we just cannot do it the way that's been happening.
You can't invite them and put them in 5-star hotels, let them come here and send their worst here.
Yes.
We got a lot of bad apples here.
We need to attract people that are able to contribute to the country.
Yes.
That will not cause us harm. Okay, that's like a very low bar. Hey, we don't want to have people that are going to commit crimes against people here.
We've got enough already.
We do have enough here already. So that's kind of my take on what's going on in terms of the immigration and what I'm hearing from constituents.
It's a big issue. We speak to people all the time. No one's happy about it, whether they're born here or they immigrated or their family came from wherever in the world. We hear the same thing. We didn't get anything for free. My grandparents didn't get anything. So it's and when we're funding it and we can't take care of our own people, our veterans,
That's the other thing.
our children, our disabled people, so on and
Exactly.
so on. Our own
Look,
poor.
Yeah. We've had the largest, out migration of New York State, in recent years. Our tax revenue is not going to be sustainable.
No.
We're okay, I heard this year, but look, the outlook for the next few years is very harsh.
It's not sustainable long term.
It's not sustainable. So we are barely doing right by New Yorkers that live here, and the strain of giving billions of dollars to give these newcomers, as they call them, shelter, debit cards for food,
Everything.
Health, a phone, healthcare, Metro
school,
cards,
education.
Are straining our financials in this city, and we just have to come to grips with the opportunity costs for New Yorkers that are here.
And I think that's a major reason across the country why our current president is very unpopular.
That is true.
It's affecting us all, whether we're a border state or not. And now, even if you look in the northern border in Canada, we're having a problem over there now, which we never had before.
Yes.
Not to this extent.
Not to this extent. And as painful as it is for New Yorkers, it was unfair. It's unfair that our border states like Florida and Texas bear the brunt of bad federal policies. And, New Yorkers or people in Massachusetts and Cape Cod who kind of said, oh gosh, what are you guys talking about? Got a little taste of what it means to have hundreds of thousands of people coming into your community that you are not prepared for, that you have no place. You didn't ask for. You're not prepared for, you have no place, and you have no resources to be able to do it in a way that keeps your community, having the things that you enjoy. And so things are strained. Things are definitely strained.
One thing that I know a lot of people are afraid of, we've only heard of some of the folks that we've captured who are on very bad lists, whether they're child molesters, terrorists, cartel, a lot of bad apples. But how many have gotten away that we don't know about? That's the scary part. So when we listen to these folks at Border Patrol, their union, and they tell us, one day you hear there's 10 million, there's 15, nobody knows how many people are here.
No.
And a lot of their cases, get wiped clean, to come back to court in 10 years, nobody shows up. It's just insanity.
It's a joke. I mean, you talk about what happens, the ones that are stopped, and the gotaways, and how many of those there are. None of them are vetted in the way that our legal immigration system requires you to be. And, I feel like all the things that we learned from 9/11 have been thrown out the window.
Yeah, literally.
I want to say,
very sad.
It is very sad. And friends of mine who I know are in law enforcement, they're on edge. They said, there are just a lot of things that we don't know about people that we are giving all the free stuff to.
Just let them in.
That are coming.
And they're not all here with good intentions.
What they could be organizing. They're not here.
Well, we've seen the Venezuelan gangs.
Yes.
Amongst others. That's just one example. We put them up in the Roosevelt Hotel, 5-star, beautifully renovated place. And we were just in Manhattan the other day, myself and Z, and we were talking. It was compared to how it should be pre-COVID. It's a ghost town. Most stores are closed down. There's still empty buildings. And if all these tourists are still really coming here, and all these shelters are hotels are shelters, where are they staying? It just doesn't add up. I don't think the tourism has came back. I think the mayor's been hyping it up a little because most of the hotels, sadly, are shelters. So if all these tourists are coming back, where are they staying?
Yes, that's true.
And we have no Airbnb.
I was going to Airbnb. They've come down on that as well. So yes, both the hotels in Manhattan as well as in, I want to say, Western Queens. There were a lot of hotels in Western Queens that also have been used as...
The whole borough is sad. The whole borough's been a dumping ground.
Yeah, it's a dumping ground.
Now, speaking of law enforcement, we had some brilliant people here that had an idea to defund the police and basically have the police do not much and basically, neuter them, if you will. What do you think of that? And secondly, speaking of all the crime we have here domestically, and now the same laws unfortunately apply to the illegal criminals, what about the bail reform? What would you want to do? Let's say you get elected tomorrow. How do you go about working with other people to bring some kind of security back?
What we absolutely need to amend, repeal is, look, I think even with me winning the seat, we will flip the supermajority. However, to actually flip the majority back to pre-2018 is unlikely to happen, I want to say, this year. So
maybe in the near future?
Well, hopefully. But I think it's really important that we think about ways of making it better, meaning improving upon a really bad law. And we have to do it with people on both sides of the aisle. I mean, that's as much as we will go out there to say, oh, we need to repeal cashless bail. That is a strong talking point. People
Sure.
want that to happen. But I also say, I don't want to lie to people in terms of saying what's the reality that I can do or even a couple of more Republicans can do. We do need to work with people across the aisle. And I think it's important to say we need to bring some sensible changes,
Yes.
such as giving judges the authority to think about the dangerousness of who we're letting out.
Yeah.
What galvanized a lot of the no bail was, oh my goodness, you're keeping someone in jail because they couldn't afford their bail, and they're in there for months and possibly years. That doesn't sit right with me either.
Sure.
Right? But we also know that many of the people that are committing crimes are repeat criminals
Oh, yeah.
that continue to get out. We cannot let that happen. Why are our laws allowing that to happen?
Yeah, we're pandering to the worst of society.
So we absolutely have to make more changes. Last week I was at a civic meeting, and an assemblywoman came to the meeting, and someone in the audience asked about, the bail reform. And she said, we know we didn't get it right, and that's why we've already made 3 changes.
Wow.
And the way that she said it was, yeah, we've made some edits, and
Edits.
we're
That's
done.
a nice way to put it.
We're done. Like, that was kind of the tone it was said in.
Nothing substantial has changed. Huh?
But, we just came off of this legislative session a couple of weeks ago, and nothing was done in this legislative session. Nothing.
Well, the budget's bigger.
So, yes, we're spending more money, and they've done a couple of, I want to say, performative laws that may help some of the Queens racists locally.
Okay.
I think they tried to do something for squatters, which
is
was
long overdue.
Well, actually, if they actually did something, I'll give them credit. But what they did was the most expedient thing that they could do for a headline.
Wow.
And to me, that is just political. And if it wasn't for a number of our Queens state electeds being challenged this year, that we wouldn't even have gotten that.
Probably right about that, yeah. They feel the pressure.
Yeah.
No.
And that's why I think it's good to always challenge people in office. We the people, we the constituents, get better policies. And people will actually listen to us. Electeds will actually listen and represent us when they feel their seat is being threatened. And so competitive races are good for everyone. So
100%.
regardless of who you like which side of the aisle you
Sure.
like, it's good for you.
And it's good every so often to change people in seats.
Oh, I
because you
mean,
can't have people
term limits
yeah,
need
30,
to come.
40, 50, we can't have.
We need to have term limits. Some of the issues that we have with electeds is that they're there. There's a
They're there
lot
forever.
of power. There's a lot of power to incumbency.
Yes.
And both in terms of just name recognition as well as the money that comes in to run successful campaigns. So once they're in, they will continue to take advantage of that, and it's not for the betterment of their constituents.
On either side. It's
On
terrible.
either side.
It's terrible.
On either side, yeah. That's true.
Now, speaking of other folks, I did see that you got 2 good endorsements. You have Curtis Leewell, who is running again, I believe, on the Republican ticket next round against Mayor Adams, Guardian Angels founder, as well as Councilwoman Palladino.
Yes.
So you got 2 good endorsements, which is great. how does it feel when you have people who are very known to say, hey, I'm supporting you and I'm behind you?
It's great. I've had a number of other endorsements, including a Democrat. Judge George Grasso,
Grasso, yes.
endorsed me. He's a Democrat, ardent anti-Trumper, I want to mention. But you know,
But you have common ground.
on the grounds that he wants a safe New York, and as someone who is a judge that rose through the ranks of NYPD, he understands that the law we have now is just not good, and he wants to see changes, and he is supporting me, endorsing me, because he wants to see changes in our bail reform package. I mean, it's bail, it's discovery, it's even qualified immunity, right? So there's a lot of things that have changed in the last few years.
It changed everything.
And even at the city council level, most recently in December, the city council passed and actually overrode the mayor's veto to make our police officers do a lot more, and I think can be less effective in terms of community patrols. So there are a lot of, I want to say, anti-law enforcement, aspects of what both the city and state have done.
Sure.
So going back to the endorsements, I want to say Councilwoman Vicky Palladino's endorsement was crucial for me to have gotten the Republican line and petitioning for the Republican line. We had to get Republicans, and most effective, most productive in the northern part of the district. And, once I said I'm endorsed by Vicky, people will say, I'll sign.
Very well known.
I'm a first-time candidate, so it's very important that people locally know who I'm being supported by, and Vicky is just huge. And now, with the larger district that I described, Curtis is absolutely
not a bad one either to get.
A very well-known name, a staple in New York City.
New York City staple, sure.
New York City staple. So that has been really, really helpful.
And we saw recently, I don't know if it was just in Queens or it was overall in New York City, but the largest number of Asians running on the GOP ticket now in this cycle.
Yes.
So tell us about that, and what do you think is causing this? Because it's something historical.
Well, actually, QNS just came out with an article this morning talking about that, in which I'm heavily quoted in there, so people can go take a look at that. But that's true. It is. I definitely, since I've been paying attention, but I believe it's true. It's
especially, it seems like Queens.
Largest number of Republican Asians running. I mean, right now in office we have a number of Asian electeds, both at the city and the state level. So that's not necessarily new, but running on the Republican line is. So I think it just speaks to where the Asian community is moving, and what has happened in the last few years that has caused this movement.
Oh, yeah. And I would say we've covered the recent Trump rally in the Bronx, outside Trump Tower, outside the Trump trial, and there were many Asian Americans there, pro-Trump. The majority of them who came were supporting him, and we heard the same story. We're tired of open borders. They believe it's a sham trial. They stand with him. They brought their flags. Very vocal.
Yes.
And we, at least from what we see when we go around and talk to people, a lot of Asian Americans are, it looks like in New York City, behind Trump, behind the GOP. And
I
like
was
you
surprised
said,
myself, I have to say,
and they're very vocal, and they come out in numbers.
They are very vocal. They're very vocal in the rallies you've seen, and
many rallies.
And on the Chinese social media, WeChat.
Yes.
Ardent supporters that are very, very active, and I mean, I want to be honest here. I am a newish Republican, even though my values and what I stand for hasn't changed for many years. I helped Lee Zeldin with his gubernatorial race.
Came very close.
Very close. I was really helping him.
Great ground game?
Yes, a lot of ground game. And Stefano Forte, who ran in the seat 2 years ago, I was also trying to help him. So I have been helping Republican candidates in the last few years because the platform that they stood for were one that aligned with my values, regardless of my party affiliation.
Sure.
So like many New Yorkers, when we had to declare our party, like, oh, Democrat, check.
Sure.
So I've been a, quote, lifelong Democrat until January of this year, where I officially changed my party affiliation. But, you know, the work that I do, the issues that I've taken on are ones that I believe the Republican Party has been standing strong on. And that's why when it came to who I wanted to devote my volunteer time in helping in the past few elections, those have been Republican candidates.
And what's your feedback you're getting from your communities when you go out? Are they enthusiastic to get change, to get to the voting? You know, do you see there's a lot of energy? Are they fired up?
I think people are definitely much more politically engaged and more politically aware. Could we have more of it? Absolutely. It's disheartening when I was petitioning to go up to Asian, neighbors to ask them to sign, and many of them were just not interested.
Just not interested in general, or because
just
you were
not interested.
Okay.
Just not interested in general. Just, I want to say, don't bother me with politics. And it's going to take, I mean, as much as I want to say, yeah, we've come a long way in the last, few years.
Sure.
But it's a long road. It takes a long time for a community to move towards the political reliability, engagement of, my Jewish friends and community, the Black community. I want to say those are two communities that are reliably out there participating in our elections. And I look to both of those communities as examples of where I hope the Asian community will move to. And I think there are a couple of reasons why we are more behind. And language is a huge barrier, right? You don't have that with the Jewish community. You don't have that with the Black community. Even the immigrant Black community, in which we have a lot of in Queens.
Sure.
So I think that's a big hurdle. And, and sadly, the reason why we've gotten involved is shit happen. People.
A lot of shit happens.
People don't get involved and
So
step
they can't
out of
afford
their
to buy groceries
complacency and so forth until they feel like their livelihood, their family, their future, their prosperity in this country is going to be impacted by them sitting back and not saying anything. I came into this fight, I want to say, through education advocacy, through de Blasio coming after the specialized high schools.
Let's talk about that, because I think we spoke about that maybe at Dwayne's barbecue on the phone, off camera. But my mother's a retired school teacher, and she used to rave, say, "I love the Asian and the Indian students because their parents install respect in education." And being that, I would equate it to this: if I'm getting on a plane, I want the best pilot, not because he's Black or white or Asian or whatever. I want the person who's qualified. So, or a doctor. I'm not going to say, "Oh, give me an Asian, give me a white." No, who's more qualified? But the fact that they're taking the test to get into those, and it's only 10 or 8 specialized schools in the city.
8 test schools.
8 out of hundreds of thousands of schools.
Yes.
And the fact that it just happens to shake out that the Asians are doing better than the whites and the Blacks and everybody else, so be it. I mean, me personally, I would say it's like sports. Whoever scores the most points, not because whatever. And, it's like the NBA. There's not a lot of white people in the NBA. I'm not making a big deal about it. I'm not going to be the best fit for the NBA. But the same thing I would say, you get in because of merit or because of skill.
Yes.
And if it happens to be more Asians or more Hispanics or more whoever it is, then
so
be it. That's the way the chips fall. So the Asians a lot of them have left New York City over this, went to Long Island to avoid this.
Yes.
And they took it very personally, and I think they should. And we saw the protests with Mayor de Blasio, and I think it still continues. There's some back and forth with Mr. Adams here, our new mayor. So as an Asian American, tell us the sentiment. What are you getting from your community? Because that's just like, it must be a terrible thing to say, well, there's too many of you here, let's even it out. In essence, is what they're saying.
It was a attack on the schools, and those schools are majority Asian, at this point. It's changed a lot, right? Stuyvesant, Bronx Science, and Brooklyn Tech, the 3 big ones that have been around for many decades.
Those are the creme de la creme.
Yeah, and through the decades, in the, I want to say in the 50s, 60s, they were mostly Jewish. And immigration to New York changed a lot over the last few decades, and more Asian families came to New York. And between, I want to say, the late 1970s through now, the schools became more and more Asian due to that. And they're really grounds for social mobility for immigrants. So you look at what the immigrants of past decades did by going to top public schools. These are public schools. Specialized schools, but public schools. And, for the most part, people who are able to do a little better, I want to say the upper middle class, tend to choose to either move out of New York City and find the school district that they want their child to go to.
Long Island or Westchester.
Long Island, Westchester, New Jersey are often the places. Or, if they stay in the city, they will choose private schools.
Which is very expensive.
Very expensive, but that's how they, continue to find places where their kids can thrive. So who ends up taking advantage or having to go to public schools? They're people with financially lower on the economic scale and new immigrants. So schools, great schools, are a path to social mobility for our immigrant families. And that's what we've seen across the decades. So yeah, I got activated because I'm an alum of the Bronx High School Science.
All right, so went to a specialized high school.
I went to a Bronx. Okay. I went to a specialized high school, and it just so happened that in 2018, when De Blasio, threw out his proposal to kill the test, I did not have kids at that pivotal grade level that I was paying attention. My younger one was in second grade at the time. My older one was beyond that. So when I met a group of parents, they're like, "Oh, where'd you, they were Chinese parents, by the way. They said, "Where'd you go to school? What was your life like?" And when I said I went to a SHSAT school, like, "Oh, what do you think about what's going on?" I said, "What's going on?" And this was in 2019. And, when I said I wasn't paying attention to a lot of the local stuff, it was true, I wasn't. And they said, "What do you think of it?" I said, I don't, wow, a lot of things have changed since I went to Bronx Science. And so the first time I spoke publicly was in March 2019. It was for a group of Chinese parents that wanted to have a voice at the joint Senate hearing in which my classmate, Senator John Liu, was actually chairing. So I spoke out in defense.
He's been a long-term politician.
Yes, a long-term politician.
Very well known in New York.
Yes, very, very well known in New York. So yeah, it was the first time I spoke publicly about, certainly about the specialized high school, and just got a little taste of what it was like to actually, speak about how I felt in a very public arena. So that was the start. And I think in the last few years, I've seen parents, specifically parents, becoming much more involved, not just in the school, but involved in politics. We know that our schools are under mayoral control. So electing a mayor that was more aligned with how we felt the school should be run was very important. So both as a co-founder of Place NYC, which is an education advocacy group, as well as the co-founder and president of Asian Wave Alliance, which is a bipartisan, nonpartisan group to advocate for Asian political engagement. In both of those, we know how important politics is in education, and I want to say even. And the reason why I'm running for state senate is because a lot of what happens in our schools are made at the state level in Albany. And education will always be the heart of what matters most to me, even though I certainly have positions and I address a lot of other things we spoke about.
Sure.
Education is going to always be a soft spot for me.
Understood. And the fight still continues. I'm sure it's not.
The fight still continues. I want to say as for the specialized high schools, Mayor Eric Adams have been pretty good. I think it was the implicit promise that he's made with the Asian community that did support him in his run for mayor. As some supported Curtis Lewa, there were also Asians that supported Eric Adams, with the understanding that he was going to leave the specialized high schools alone. And so far he's kept his promise.
And being that he's underwater politically in terms of popularity,
A lot of the other things,
a lot of
and
reasons,
I can.
he would definitely love to have the majority of the Asians support him because he's going to need every vote he can.
Yes.
Which,
yes.
To be fair, he is going to need every vote from Asian and non-Asian, so he can use all the help he can get.
Yes. I think on the while I wish he would do more in education, it is certainly not as contentious as it was when De Blasio and Carenza ran the school system. So I think both Adams and Banks are much better, certainly with the PR aspect of it than Carenza and De Blasio.
And he left us lots of lawsuits that we paid for, and spent a lot of money on adding to the staff there and renovating a whole building and fancy furniture. So
no. and while I'm giving some credit to the mayor for where he's been in terms of education.
So a lot more practical than Bill de Blasio, to say the least.
A lot more, and some decentralization, giving local communities some flexibility on how they want to run their K-8 schools. So I think that's good, although there's been more of mandated standardized curriculum. But I can spend hours talking about education,
Sure.
but I want to just shift to a criticism of the mayor, and that's with his City of Yes. So while I will give him credit to not drive parents crazy with some of the educational policies as it comes to specialized high school admissions, he is driving most of my constituents, my neighbors, crazy with his City of Yes.
Which, for those who don't know out there, City of Yes is basically where developers who factually and unfortunately happen to be the biggest donors to Mayor Adams can basically go into a small community, a residential community, one family, two family homes, and just put up a 14-story building, ginormous properties with pretty much no input from the community and no infrastructure. So there's no more hospital, there's no more internet, no more water, anything like that. They just plop these buildings down. It's been happening in Forest Hills and in Regal Park, Astoria, a lot of places. So we recently covered one of those events that I think Belrose was included in that area as a Floral Park.
I think Eastern Queens United.
Yes,
and I was one of the people who asked a question
with
there.
Paul Graziano.
Yes, with Paul Graziano.
So obviously something that unfortunately Queens seems to be the epicenter of this, as well as a lot of other issues we have in the city. So what are your constituents telling us? People are definitely scared and people are definitely concerned.
People are very angry,
yes.
about the City of Yes, and I want to say that is something I'm hearing across the district. Senate District 11 is about 2/3 homeowners in terms of one family, two family, co-op, and condo. So large majority are people who own where they live and have made life savings.
Huge investments.
Huge investments, roots in their community, and for some, the nest egg of when they retire and cash out or maybe pass on to their children
Go to
as
Florida.
part of building generational wealth, right, in the United States. And the reason why many people choose Eastern Queens is for more green, a little more space. Peaceful, quiet, and with that comes some inconveniences, right? We have to commute farther. There are very few subway stations in our area, so we have buses, we have express buses, but for the most part, for people to get to point A to point B in a time efficient manner, you're driving.
Yes.
People have cars in this part. And the City of Yes is targeting 1 and 2 family homes. They have no thoughts to the infrastructure, as you mentioned, that is required for building more.
Yeah.
For building more. Most of our streets, single family streets, people have a driveway, they have street parking, and because it does cost a lot for people to live in New York. We have
more so than ever.
More so than ever. I have an adult child. Many of my friends and family have adult children who end up moving back
Yes.
moving back because they cannot afford yet to have a place of their own,
Even the
right?
rent's $4,000 for a studio.
Right. So,
$3,000
so,
for a
so
studio.
is the housing strain, there? Yes, I feel that. But is the solution to attack this part of Queens? No. So what has happened already with the 1 and 2 family homes is instead of having 1 or 2 cars, we have 3 or 4 cars because they're more multi-generational families because of the demographics, because of kids not being able to afford their own place yet. It's already really hard. And the idea of thinking that we're going to allow, building of small like apartment buildings
And not be asked about it.
and not be required to build in parking, not
Other
required
infrastructure?
to build essential services. So one of the things that I talk about a lot is our class size law. They're in this part of Queens.
Schools are gonna
we're
get
gonna
killed.
we're under a lot of strain to
Yeah.
comply with the law. And I said, we don't even have enough schools to comply with the laws now. How are we going to deal with more people moving into more
And we can't build the schools
buildings?
fast enough.
Yeah,
We can't.
and in my district, I have precinct 109 as part of my district, and for many years, we've been wanting to have another precinct because
Oh,
of the
yes.
population
That's
growth.
a big
right?
story also.
It's a big story.
And the last one that was built was like 70 years ago or something. A long time
Yes.
ago.
I mean, look, we have a shortage in terms of people going to becoming police officers. So even if we get the money, we get the precinct, I don't know if we have
Who's
the
gonna fill
police
that police
officers
station?
who's going to fill it. So that's a real issue. But
Yeah.
but it goes back to the essential services that we have to think about when we want to build. Like Mayor Adams, build, baby, build. I mean,
When does it stop?
You have to think about what you're creating, and in our eastern part of Queens, we're already tight on a lot of things I'm talking about: parking, schools, police stations, fire departments, water, sewage, electrical grid,
Everything.
as we're aggressively pushing a lot of green policies from Albany. So it's just not pragmatic. It's just not Is the problem there? I think we've had a housing problem for as long as we want to talk about it. When I came out of school in my 20s, trying to find a rental, it was crazy. It's really no different than it is today.
Except a lot more expensive.
You know what? I'm not sure it is. I want to say, and
Even with the inflation?
no, shockingly, when I was in my 20s looking for a place in Manhattan, the rent was, I want to say, in the 12 to 1500 for a studio 1-bedroom, and I know in Manhattan it's probably now in the 2200 to 3000 range if you want it
easy.
in a decent neighborhood and so
if
forth.
not more.
So I'm not saying it hasn't gone up, but wages have gone up. So someone who's really good with inflation and economics can figure out whether it's at the same rate, but kids coming out today are making more than what I did coming out in the 1990s. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So the city of Yes is definitely a contentious issue.
It is absolutely contentious. I've been fighting it. I've been speaking at town halls,
Yes.
at community boards.
There's what, 96 of them in the last 6 months?
Oh well, not for me, but
with
for
Paul.
for
Yeah.
Paul Graziano, certainly he's done a lot of those. I've dialed into some of those Zoom meetings just to listen.
Very interesting guy.
No,
Very
he's
knowledgeable.
very, very knowledgeable and a true advocate for people who want to stay in Queens, stay in their homes.
Speaking of all these things with Paul going on in these hearings, community hearings anyway, he did mention that there might be one way to get out of this where we'd have to create like 2,000 people in like a separate community, almost like an
Secession
HOA.
plan.
Yes.
To put it bluntly.
Have you spoken with your constituent or thought about it? Because it's like almost like last result, last thing you can do to protect yourself is start these little groups everywhere in the same neighborhood.
Yeah. I don't bring it up right away because I think there's a time and place for things. And when I'm speaking to someone for a minute or two, it's probably it's not enough time for the complexity of what that means. I think what I try to convey is that you need to get engaged with your community boards and fight and speak up.
Yes.
So we are certainly in the time frame of fighting. What Paul and Assembly Member Jamie Williams did was to think ahead. And I think that's really important that they've put it out there, right? And that is going to be, something we can look to if things don't go our way. But for me and for the people I'm speaking with in the community, it's about fighting now. It's about not saying yes to this city of yes, saying
not being
no.
complacent.
Not being complacent. I think there will be a time when we need to have that conversation, and they've put things in place, which I'm grateful for. And if and when I'm elected to Albany, I will certainly want to support that if things don't go our way.
Okay. All
But
right.
yes.
Well, before we let you go, and we appreciate you coming here, Yiatin, is there anything you'd like to tell the constituents in the New York State Senate District 11, or any website or any events you have coming up you'd like to disclose?
Sure. I am on social media. I'm on X, formerly known as Twitter,
Okay.
both as my personal account. I also have a campaign account, so they can find that through my website. And my website is yiatin4ny.com. And I do update that, and they can read a little bit more about me, which I haven't shared here. There are events coming up all the time.
So if they wanted to donate or volunteer or
Absolutely.
get behind you, they could.
Both of those I need plenty of.
District 11, are you listening to the lady?
I need donations, contributions to my campaign. I'm working really hard, but without a doubt, things cost money.
Yes.
And we have a matching fund program now for this year. So in-district donors are able to be matched 10 times. So if they donate $250, which is the maximum that they can donate if they want to be matched, I will get $2,550 to my campaign. And
That helps a lot.
$2,550 is probably the cost will pay for maybe 1/3 of an ad in the local paper.
Yeah.
So things cost money, and I would appreciate that. And I need volunteers. People who want to get involved in a campaign. I ask that they sign up to be a volunteer and help me knock on doors and speak to your neighbors about why we need a change in this district. Why
all
we
of those
need
things
a
are very
change in
important.
Albany. Yes,
Very important things.
absolutely, yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen of Queen's Voice, in particular, if you're in District 11 for the Senate seat, you heard what the lady had to say. She obviously has a lot of issues that she's concerned about, that her constituents are concerned about. She's following all the issues. She has some very good ideas. She wants to bring, some stability here. If you can help her out, reach out to her. And we appreciate you coming out today, Yiatin. We wish
Thank
you the
you
best
so
with your
much, Peter.
campaign,
No,
and we
I
hope
appreciate it.
we'll get to talk with you again
Yes,
through the whole
absolutely.
process of everything, with some news and some updates, and hopefully only good news.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Peter Kafalis here with Yiatin Chu, District 11, New York State Senate. Look her up, see what your options are, who's best for you and your family and your beliefs. And once again, Peter Kafalis, thanks for joining us, Queen's Voice, here at the one and only Jax Inn Diner, Northern Boulevard, Jackson Heights. Bye, guys.